In this Just Campers how-to video, we're going to take a look at replacing the fresh air hoses and the one for the air filter on your upright engine. So it doesn't matter if it's a 1200, 1300, 1600 through a Beetle or a camper of any age. And it's quite a straightforward job to do. The tubes themselves come in a variety of different styles. The choice is up to you, but very minimal tools required. So we'll have a look at those first. So all the tools are from the basic toolkit. Hammer, mole grips, pliers, always useful, and we've got a little bit of tinware that we might need to wiggle. Depending on what style of tube you use, then we'll need some system for cutting it, a cutting blade there, screwdrivers for doing up the Jubilee clips if you choose to use them. The parts, of course, available from Just Campers online. We need the Jubilee clips that are the right diameter for the hosing. These are the little tiny connectors that go between the exhaust system on a stock VW engine setup and exhaust setup onto the heater hose. They fit down there. Little rubber grommets that seal that unit off from the main tinware. And then a choice on the hoses themselves. You can go for the shiny stuff here, or the late model style, which is plastic and genuine, and it's pre-cut to length, although personally I don't like them, or the original style, which was fitted to most Volkswagen engines, which is exactly the same as the silver stuff, but has actually got cardboard coating on both sides, and this is one long piece that we just cut to length, and they're sufficient to do all three hoses. Well, the air hoses is one area that non-VW mechanics always ignore, and the first thing to note is there are no Jubilee clips here. Now, if your air hosing is in good condition, they can be self-supporting, but I always suggest putting one on. So if you have got a Jubilee clip in place, you can undo that and then just pull it off. Literally, it's just a bit of cardboard tube that pushes over the end there, and then the same on the bottom. And as you can see, these are tatty, so visually don't look too nice. They're not at the point that they're going to be causing any major problems. But there's one thing you need to bear in mind, and it's one good reason for doing this job, that the heat exchanger system, the heaters on a Volkswagen, are actually taking heat from around the exhaust. So we don't want any leaks at all. We want the fresh air going in, around the heat exchangers and through. Otherwise you'll get carbon monoxide poisoning. So a fully sealed system is always best. So take off all your old hoses first. And here we do actually have an original style Jubilee clip on there, and we're going to replace the one for the preheater as well. And something else that often gets missed, and you might just have to make a little device, a little scoop up on the end, this one hasn't got one, is the tinware underneath there that Volkswagen originally fitted to scoop the warm air up. We'll look at that when we put the last one in. Finally, over here, this one's a bit tighter. And again, it's just a bit old and manky, and we'll put the job right. Well, fitting an exhaust to a VW engine is probably not best left to somebody who's not familiar with them, and unfortunately the heater system seems to suffer the most. They seem to throw things away. Now, when we took these air hoses off, we didn't have these little connector sleeves, which basically just fit on the bottom side, so on the engine tinware side, not on the fan housing. And essentially, these just push into the top heater reservoirs on the stock standard exhaust. Well, it's a little tight and confined in the engine bay, so we can't actually see where the connecting pipe is going on, but I've dummied up an exhaust and a heat exchanger. So we're going to take a look at that and see exactly what is underneath that tinware there. So if we have a look down, this is our connecting pipe just here, and it fits into this top heat reservoir. It's another little area that collects up some hot air. Now that basically blows the cold air from the fan housing down through our air hose that we're replacing into the heat exchanger here, through the heat exchanger, and then onwards into the car itself via the big flexes underneath. Now this at the moment is set up for a camper here, and the cable that controls it opens up the flaps that allows the warm air to go into the car. It's set up like that. And on a Beetle, there's just a simple clamp arrangement that comes on here. This time the cable's attached at the bottom, and it just literally pivots through and opens at the top. Now the condition of your heat exchanger is directly proportionate to the condition of your health. This is an exhaust pipe, carbon monoxide going through here and at the front. And it's very important that all of the outer sheathing here is in good condition. Obviously these are brand new, so there's very little chance of any carbon monoxide getting in. If you do happen to be fitting a heat exchanger, or if somebody forgot to do it, you may have some problems fitting the little connecting pipe. So, as I've already mentioned, it fits in at the front here, but you do have to remove these little blanking plates here. They can be a little tight, Now, I always used to think they were there for hot weather climate where you didn't need much air, but it could well just be the case that they're there to protect that circle. Now, you may find it will go straight in, or you might wish to just open up this area with a pair of pliers, or, you know, it's not correct use of tools, but you only need to literally just tap the edges out of that reservoir, just sufficient so this goes in, because you want it to be a nice tight fit. And again, gentle taps and just go all the way around in a circle. That's what you'll be doing inside the car. Remember, the tinware is along here and your fan belt is just up here. So that's all that. One final thing to bear in mind, and that's the condition of the heat exchanger where it comes in. So I'll just spin it round. Now, this connection down here between the exhaust here and underneath the clamp and the front part of the heat exchanger, they are prone to wearing over time, and you can get rust holes in here, or if this clamp's come loose it can wear away, which means exhaust gases will be escaping here and could actually get sucked in. And this clamp here is very important. When you're fitting your extension tube on the top here, you might want to slacken this big clamp affair off so that you can move the whole lot around, and that way you can get this perfectly lined up with a hole in the tinware. And then, of course, just looking back at what we had in the car and where we're going to be putting the hose, we'll have our sealing grommet that goes down, and then finally our air hose goes over the top. There we go, all explained out of the car. We'll carry on with the job now. Now, the connector pipe is not equal both ends, so it's the shorter portion underneath the swage that goes down into the top reservoir, and then our air hose, 50mm air hose, pushes over the top piece up here. Now, there is a Jubilee clip which holds the top reservoir in place. It might be an idea to slacken that off at the moment to line it up, but we'll just show you the process now. But you can take your time over it, make sure everything's in the right place, and you just put it in gently till you can feel it, and then you might just need to tap it down flat and secure with the hammer. But take your time over it. It is important. Remember, we need to seal it off totally so that we've got all the air going through to add to the power of the heaters and making sure that no exhaust fumes can get in. Next up, we'll fit the rubber grommet to seal this all down. The chances are it was thrown away many, many years ago. They're only very cheap, so it's a case of pushing it over, getting it down, and pushing it down. Does two things: make sure that all that cold fresh air is going down into the heat exchanger and pushing through, and also it stops any of the hot air from underneath the exhaust leaking up past here and being sucked down into the fan housing. You really do need to keep this totally sealed so warm air stays underneath. Well, once you've got the second one all into position, then it's time to look at the hoses. Now, if you've chosen to fit the pre-cut to length ones, simple case of putting them on, and if you want, putting the Jubilee clips on. And the old style or original style, it's just simply a case of straightening out any kinks and curves that are in the hose there, and lining it up, marking it off and cutting it off. And if you're not good with sharp knives, look for a responsible adult. Don't forget, we've got the other two to do as well, same thing. But if you buy this one length, there'll be more than sufficient to do all three. So it's just literally a case of being careful. Remember, we've got it lined up nicely. The easiest way is to actually make a cut in one side. Some people do like to use a hacksaw to do this job, but then just feed it through. And if you can, it makes sense to follow through on one of the little ridges here, but it's not crucially important. But just roll it away from you. And all joking aside, sharp standing knife, you don't want any accidents while you're doing this. But it's quite straightforward, and we'll get on and do the others and then show you how to actually fit them on. Once you've cut it through, just take off any little loose ends. You don't want those floating around in the exhaust system. And then what I like to do is just ever so gently just peel the edge out, just to give it almost a little flange, and that will help it go over both the connector pipe on the bottom side down by the tinware and on the heater hose itself. Do that on the ends of each. Well, the first thing to do is to give it a little bit of a stretch. It is amazing how this stuff grows. And then, because you bought the Jubilee clips from Just Campers, they're actually the right size and they're just ever so slightly loose, so they're a nice fit straight over. And you can put both of those on. And then it's just a case of giving it a little bit of a twist to replicate the original one and where it's going on. And because we've already opened up the ends, it should be a simple case of pushing them on, giving them a twist and a push, a little bit of a wiggle if you like, and then we move on to the bottom and just a case of giving that a little push and a wiggle as well. Once they're in and you're happy, just position your clips, tighten them up, and the job is done. Well, finally we come to the preheat for the air filter. Now, if the piece of tinware that would be poking up from the bottom there is missing, and so many mechanics throw them away, then you can just rearrange your tubing here. So what we're going to do, remember we've already cut it to the length of the one we're replacing, so we push it into place and give it a good twist so that we're going down to the right area, and we'll keep the right orientation there. Bring it away, and what we're going to do is actually put a little scoop on the end of here so that it can draw up the warm air and stop the carburettor icing. It's obviously much better if you do acquire the correct piece of tinware, but if you're in a real fix, this system can help. So all we're doing is literally cutting a little scoop from here. Again, being careful, standing blades sharp, you don't want to hurt yourself. And then you might find it a good idea to get it through the hole just to give it a little squash. So I'll keep emphasising that if you have got the correct original piece of tinware, that's going to be a much more efficient system, but this will still do the job. To go underneath and pull it through a little, and that way it will keep itself secured, and then obviously you can bend the scoop back towards the cylinders and the push rod tube so that it will pick up the warm air. And of course, I've forgotten it. I'm going to have to take this off and put another Jubilee clip back on. Well, there we are then. A very straightforward job to do, minimal tools required. Of course, everything available from Just Campers online. Now, we've smartened up the engine bay and we've given ourselves a good supply of flowing cool air into our heating system. But whilst we were doing this job, we were also making sure that we weren't getting any poisonous carbon monoxide fumes from the exhaust system getting into that heating system either. So, nice simple job to do in an afternoon.